Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to Celtic Down Under, the weekend review edition, West Australian crew. Hosted by Sean, as usual, and joined by Paul and Anthony, also as usual. Pretty consistent, guys. Good job. Paul, how's your week been?
Yeah, pretty good. It's the wife's birthday tomorrow, so we did go out for a bit of dinner and a bit of a day out in the Arvo. So that was all very pleasant until the match after that. And yeah, it went downhill from then on. But yeah, we'll get into that in a bit. But yeah, just generally ticking along at work. So usual story.
So you took your missus out for dinner and then went and watched the Celtic game after
Made
dinner.
sure came home and made sure I was home in time to watch the game. Yeah,
So you
we
tucked
had
her
a
up
couple
in
more.
bed and gave her a
No, we
glass
had a
of
couple more
wine.
drinks. She potted around. I don't know what she's on her phone or whatever, and I was watching that nonsense.
It's a delicate balancing act, watching Celtic and maintaining
Well,
a.
yeah. So we had a whole day. So we went out. We went out. We ordered a new car in the morning. Then we went. So that was a pretty big bloody birthday present. Then we took the dogs out for a bit of a long walk, and we had a bit of lunch and a bite and a beer. And then we came back and got changed, dropped the dogs, and then we went out for dinner. It was an early dinner because one, she likes an early dinner, and two, it meant I could get back time for kickoff. So yeah, it's all very well balanced. The only thing that let it down was a terrible performance and result
From you or from Celtic?
from Celtic, obviously.
Anthony, do you pay a similar price to keep your relationship happy on Saturday?
I just have to commit to watching a lot of Formula One, so that's kind of my penance to bear. And saying that, last night in Zandvoort wasn't too bad. The rain makes it interesting, so when there's rain on the track, anything can happen. Except obviously Max Verstappen winning again. Yes, obviously just try to shake off the Saturday night blues from watching Celtic, which we'll get onto in a second. I got to hold a wee newborn baby yesterday. Our best friends just had their second child, so congratulations to Aaron and Pete, we're little Lockie. So that was nice. But yeah, pretty quiet actually. We're off to Brisbane this weekend, so bit of a quiet one. And yeah, it was like punctuated by a very average performance at Parkhead.
Yeah, I was in a room full of I was doing a bar shift at my clubhouse, and it was like a birthday party. It was all like English people and Australian people, and all they wanted to do is, oh, what's happening in the EPL? I was like, I don't give a shit, man. I'm watching the Celtic game. So I had the Celtic TV on while they're all like trying to like find out what's going on with whatever new Manchester United or whatever. I was like, nah, jog on, guys. I'm in charge here. But yeah, probably
Big Ange got the bickies in the early game for Tottenham, so that sort of rubbed a little bit of salt into the wound to a certain degree as well. So sort of like, doing well though. He's doing well. Very good.
Mm-hmm. And there was a Glasgow derby as well. Partick beat Queen's Park 3-1, which is interesting as well. So it's all going on. We can maybe even talk about Lee Johnstone a little bit later if we really want to, but I think the Monday guys covered that in a good bit of depth, so maybe we'll just brush over it. Paul, talk us through the game. What happened?
Well, first things, I guess the lineup, whilst maybe didn't surprise me in terms of selection, I was a little bit disappointed in the starting lineup. I thought, despite him not having a great game, I thought there was an argument for maintaining home in the team. Trying to get players' confidence up by giving more game time instead of just chopping and changing. We've talked a bit before about how Turnbull and O'Reilly together isn't maybe the best combination. I know Anthony's sort of explained that point more than once in the past, and I agree with him.
Before you move on from that point, the Matt O'Reilly booking was a direct result of David Turnbull losing possession. Turnbull takes a heavy touch, a terrible touch, and then Matt O'Reilly has the cover for him and eat a booking. So
add to the list.
Just while we're on the chat of those two and that direct correlation, that was the moment for me when I was done with David Turnbull. That one single moment. I mean, obviously many moments, but that was the final one.
I think his performance in general was, he was at times basically an empty shirt. He hasn't got a high intensity press. He's one paced. His distribution is not great, but he's just generally he's leaving Calmac, isolated. I don't know, like for all people go, Holmes a project, and you know he didn't have a great game against Kilmarnock, who did. I just think we should have persevered with him. His 20-minute cameo at Celtic Park previously, he looked good. I think the space suits him. You know, he looks like he's got more about him in terms of running with the ball and without the ball. I'd have just liked to see us push, give the guy a bit of a bit of a positive push and say, here you go, you know, have another crack. Because there is not a lot of competition in there, right? Clearly Awata is out of favour for whatever reason. So that's not an option. So really it's, you know, it's either at the moment it's either Turnbull or Home. And I'd have rather seen we've seen plenty of what Turnbull can do, right? And flatters to deceive at best. So I'd have liked to see Holmes obviously a new signing. Yes, maybe want to get up to speed, but as we spoke about previously, St Johnstone at home, regardless of how far form is or otherwise, should have been a game where be confident enough to give a young player a bit of a chance. He did it with Yang, and I was pleased to see Yang come in, and he had a pretty good game again, albeit, you know, maybe not quite the final product at all times that you would hope for, but I thought there's enough there to be optimistic about more to come. Scales, obviously, you know, a lot of people seem to want Scales to succeed. It's not that I don't want him to succeed. I just don't think he's good enough, right? His level's Aberdeen. That's what I think. I think his level's Aberdeen. His level's not us. Even as a backup, I don't think he's good enough. He's only in the conversation because of the injuries we've got. Again, I'd have liked to see a Watt play. But obviously, as we said, he's out of favour. So hopefully, we'll pick up at least an on loan centre back in this next few days, and we aren't going to Ibrox in the Champions League with Scales, because the one time he was properly asked to defend, he was awful. Lost weak header and he got turned inside out, and took heart to bail him out with a really good save. First half we could have the game should have been put to bed. 3 very decent chances. O'Reilly should score. Kyogo, you would usually expect him to hit the target. He just turns it around the post. And to be fair, O'Reilly had a pretty good finish, or a pretty good attempt that the keeper had a double save on. But there's 3 half decent chances there. The Matt O'Reilly one close in on goal, he should score. And I think if that goes in, we probably go on and win the game. He has an equally, if not better, chance second half. But really, from the time the subs came on, you look to the bench, and if you think back to Ange, you look to the bench to go again and to throw energy on and to keep the tempo at a level. That the substitutions, you just knew that the life fell out of us when the subs came on, and we could have played for another 2 hours with that team, and they weren't going to score.
Anthony, anything you want to add to that or pick up on?
Yeah,
go broad, or do you want to pick up any points Paul's made there?
I think I'll have to do a brief overview. It's a few points. So I think seeing AJ back in the team was a big positive. So that was a welcome surprise, I guess. Obviously, there was talk that he was back training, but to get him back on the park, I think he made a big difference at right back. And I felt that a lot of our play came down that right-hand side. So that was a positive. Well, may as well start with a positive. I think 2 weeks ago when we were at Celtic Park, I said that we'd get away with O'Reilly and David Turnbull in the same team when we're playing the so-called Diddy teams. Unfortunately, I was wrong about that, because obviously we didn't have enough to beat St Johnstone on the weekend. David Turnbull, I agree, very one-paced. Apart from that one run that fed McGregor for one of O'Reilly's chances, he really was missing in action. And I suppose the corner set piece for O'Reilly's first chance, that was actually quite a well-worked move. But, you know, one corner opportunity out of, what do we have, about 24 corners, something like that? We had an insane number of corners, and they all just felt like they were the same floaty ball in for the Bulgarian keeper for St Johnstone, just plucking everything out of the air. But I digress. McGregor's form line still very concerning. Taylor, again, very concerning. Scales, I agree, Paul. He had one thing to do that whole game, and he didn't do it. He let the ball bounce a couple of times. He got turned on the byline, which I hate. Just put it out to touch. He gave away a corner, but to let him turn him back in again like that after being turned the first time, that's bad. And then he was quite one-paced and lackadaisical when he was on the ball as well. So there wasn't a sense of urgency every time that he got the ball.
So can I just pause you on Scales because I wanted to add a couple of bits.
Yeah, go for it.
I am terrified of him starting next week at Ibrox. He was shocking, and like we're playing the worst team in the top flight, right? And I don't want to really hear anything else because they are, and he, yeah. There's obviously the one that stood out where he gets turned and Joe Hart has to bail him out with a great save. But even in the first half, there was 2 moments where it was done for me. Even before that, there's a throw in that goes to him, and he just lets it go under his foot. Like he can't even control a throw in; it just bounces under his foot. And then there's another moment where him and Lagerbielk jump into each other for a header, and I'm like, okay. And again, this is before the moment that everyone's picked up on where he gets turned by I can't remember the Johnstone player's name. So even for me, there were signs that if this was a good team we were playing, would have been like 2-0 down at halftime, right? Just from unpressured errors. So I'm on board with everyone saying Scales should not be. He needs to go. Scales need to get out of the club. I've had enough of him.
We're in a wee bit of a situation at the moment, obviously, with injuries. So Carter Vickers is out, Norofsky's out, and Stephen Welsh is out, right? So you've got Lagerbielke, who's come in, literally played 2 games that he probably wouldn't have been expected to play otherwise. I think he's done a reasonable job since coming in. And obviously Scales is getting a run at the moment because literally no one else. If we bring in a centre-half on loan, yes, they could definitely help in the next couple of months. And then after that, I mean, you would assume he's going to start becoming surplus to requirements. And then we're going to be in a situation where we have theoretically a plethora of centre-halves. But a loan deal probably makes sense. A permanent deal, probably not so much. But the other issue is that if you have an injury to either Scales or Lagerbielke, what happens then? You know, like you really, what do you do?
Anthony Ralston. I'd rather have Anthony Ralston than than Scales. Right now.
Let's play Ralston or Iwata. I mean, I think that would be the only 2 options that you'd have available to you. And obviously, Iwata's on the nose for whatever reason. He's not even getting a look in. I guess to a broader point in that game, and just in general, from what I've seen since Brendan's taken over, is, you know, I want to use a slightly politically incorrect phrase, but I don't think we know whether we're Arthur or Martha. Like, in some phases of play, it looks a bit like Ange, and it looks a bit like last season. And then there's a lot of times, most of the time, where it seems to be Brendan Rodgers' style, but we're sort of caught in 2 minds. Perfect example, you know, we talked about this before, how Kilder's dropping deep and it looks good and he's linking up the play, but he's dropping that deep at the moment that he's not getting into that position where you would know that he would just get on the end of a cross. And the perfect one was he come deep and then the ball that gets whipped across, and it was AJ that put the ball across. It was a great ball, and there was no takers. And in last season, Kilder would have lapped that up, but because he's dropping deep now, he doesn't know, like, where am I meant to be? Where's this cross coming? And you're just thinking that, going, that's a perfect example of a team caught in 2 minds, not 100% certain on the new system, reverting to type, and this is where the inconsistencies and just the general clickiness of our final third play is just lacking at the moment. And we had an XG of 1.83, so we had enough chances to win that game. We had enough chances to win the Kilmarnock game. Although we played terribly, we still created chances to win that game as well. And we haven't taken them 2 games in a row. So yeah, it's frustrating. It's hard to watch. I think the first half was definitely better than the second half. I totally agree with Paul. There was absolutely nothing on that bench that you would go, oh, he's a match winner, he's going to come on and change the game. I'm sorry, but when Yang's getting taken off, and in fairness, he played reasonably well. His end product, again, is a work in progress, but, you know, very busy, beating players. And in games like that, when basically they're playing the Craig Levine 10 behind the ball, you kind of, you've got to have players with that technical ability. And Maeda struggles in that environment. Again, it's 2 weeks in a row that he's had a pretty average game, and that shot that he had kind of typified that. But then when James Forrest comes on, you're thinking, well, no disrespect, James, I mean, you're a club legend, but is he really going to change your game with 10, 15 minutes to go? You know, is that where we're at? And obviously we'll touch on transfers and what we think we still need, and there's still a week to go, but they are going to have to be very, very busy to try and remedy this, so that we've got some players on the bench that we can actually bring on that are actually potentially going to change the game. Because at the moment, it's very, you know, it's just not it's not inspiring. And like I said, as soon as those changes got made on 60 minutes, we not unraveled, but it got pretty ragged. And AJ had to come off. He's only played his first game of the season. I totally get that, but we lost a lot when he came off. We lost that drive down the right-hand side. And then Abada didn't really have a good game when he came off the bench. Just one of those things that can happen. But yeah, when he brought Forrest on, and it just all, for me, it just kind of, I went, no, we're not going to score here. And then that was that, basically. So
there was a lot of chat in like the various group chats that I'm in, like at halftime and start into the start of the second half, saying, "Oh yeah, we're dominating here. Our goals coming. We're playing well." I didn't see that. To be honest, that wasn't my viewing of it. At halftime, I was very down on it. I'd said we created one good chance, the Matt Riley one, and I'd said we had one half chance, which was the Yang one that goes over the bar. You could maybe chuck in that Kyogo one that goes wide on the volley. That's a hard chance, I thought. But I thought that
it is a hard chance, but on his day he tucks that away, or at least hits the target. But
yeah, and that they all came in a 15-minute spell in that first half, and I thought apart from that we were off it, and then the second half nothing. Like if you go back and watch
there's a Riley chance he should score. That's arguably even better than the first half chance. It's at least up there. They are both gilt edge chances. He's got to tuck away, not one or the other, both. He's got to score both those goals, and he hits it straight at the keeper both times. It's not like the keeper's even moved. It's not like the ball's super fast and flashed. He just has to react. He's a player of his ability, and we've seen him score some great goals. And he started the season well with 2 goals. He should tuck both of those away. And if he does, we're having a completely different conversation. And the fan base are still on edge about the signings, but it's not quite as horrific as it feels at the minute. Which is also an overreaction, but that's where we're at.
But there was 2 red flags for me during the game. There was one that was about 8-9 minutes in, and I think O'Reilly was in possession. I can't remember who it was. And you've got it wasn't. Sorry, it was Johnstone. And you've got Maeda and O'Reilly both standing next to each other in the corner of the box, like not moving, not knowing where to go or what they're doing, or just not doing anything at all of any urgency. And I was like, okay, either Maeda doesn't know what he's doing or he doesn't want to do anything. I'm not really sure which one. And then in the second half, the red flag for me was whenever we're trying to play those incisive through balls, like the cutting balls, the St. Johnstone players were committing to the sliding block before the pass is even been taken. So we're so predictable in that sense, right? There was 2 occasions, I don't know the guy's name, the defender, where I think it was, who was on the right at that point? I can't remember now. Maybe it was Kalmak, and he tries to play a sliding ball through it, and the guy's already committed to the sliding block and blocks it both times before the pass is even made. So it's predictable, and there's just a lack of urgency throughout.
Well, it's predictable because there's not multiple options for the player on the ball, right? So in Ange's system, he's looking for at least 2 to 3 options for every time somebody's on the ball, and that's where the little triangles come in, and the quick movement of the ball, particularly through the lines. You're lucky if they've got one option. And part of that's the lack of quick movement by not necessarily the ball's moving pretty slowly, but so is the play around the movement of players around the ball isn't particularly quick, or as you point out, Sean, unpredictable. Like it's pretty clear what's going to happen. The other thing I mentioned this elsewhere, but we talked about in the first 2 games when it was still a novelty that Kyogo was dropping deep. On occasion, not constantly, but on occasion he was dropping deep, and not super deep, so like beyond, somewhere between the center circle and the D, he was dropping in that hole. And what that was doing at the time was defenders weren't sure. It's not something they were used to. So sometimes one would come and one would stay, and that would create the space, which was the point, presumably. And players like O'Reilly or Turnbull were getting in and around the corner and being the most advanced player and getting in on goal with clean chances. Sometimes we took that, sometimes we didn't. But we were early on, we were quite excited about that because it was something a bit more unpredictable, and it gave defenders a chance to sort of make a decision and potentially create gaps. What we've seen, and we said this would be interesting because defenders won't know whether to stay or go. So what's happened in the next 2 games? Both teams have been really well drilled. Their bosses have got them like, don't get sucked into him. They're quite happy to let the midfield deal with him if he comes into that space. And the back 4 is rigid and deep. And there isn't a gap to play through and get players beyond. So then it's just these 2 banks of 4 or two backs of five almost, and there's nowhere to go. And then Kyogo's just coming deeper and deeper to look for the ball. And he's, like to Anthony's earlier point, he's just further and further away from where he should be. So when there is a quick bit of play and the ball comes into the area where you expect him to be, so dangerous, he isn't there, or he's killing himself to get in there.
I noticed that three times, the ball across, not just the one that you mentioned with Dallas Johnson, but I noticed it 3 times.
Well, and if you look at the Kilmarnock game, Home gets the byline, he gets the ball in an area that Kyogo should be, but because he's got starting places further up the pitch, he's struggling to get there, and he's just getting late at the back post, and he's not got a position to turn it in from that angle. I feel like we're, to Anthony's point again, we're betwixt and between. We don't know. We're not one thing nor the other, and that's a bedding in period. But there's also a question to be asked to the boss to say, if you don't think you've got the players to play the system you're trying to play, should you be playing it? Horses for courses comes to mind. These guys have been drilled for 2 years to play a certain way. If he doesn't think he's got the players to play the way he wants to play, maybe there's some pragmatism to be had and just play. Find a way. Don't be so forced, but find a way to win until you've got the players, or the players back from injury, the new players in, or you've got your squad drilled well enough on the training ground to move towards the new version. I don't think you should be sort of on trial and dropping points this early in the system. In the season, I just think there should be a bit more pragmatism, especially with the amount of injuries we've got. And I'm not unsympathetic to that situation.
Well, if the Rodgers system, right, we're talking about is supposed to be one touch and fast movement, right? Is that a problem, a lack of quality through both, players that we've lost by players moving on and through injury? Is it we're just not got the quality to play that system at the moment, or do we need to change the system? Is it because Rodgers in the media has used the word quality a couple of times, so I could tell you what I think he thinks, or what I think.
It's obvious. It's obvious he thinks he hasn't got the quality, but you're right. Some of that's injury, but we've been sitting on a ton of cash for weeks now, and if he's not able to push the board and the recruitment team to get the players in by now, I don't know what happened in those Mallorca discussions, because this is very far away from where I think we thought we would be by this point in this close to the window.
We're down 6 first team players basically from last season. So we lost Jota, he's been transferred. Moy retired. Tate's injured.
Starfelt.
Starfelt's away. CCV's injured. So that's 5. And it was add 6. What's the 6th one?
I think AJ's just come back.
And AJ's just come back, right? So there was still half a team, right? Who have we replaced any of those positions? I mean, obviously injuries are injuries. You can't help that so much. But
just Starfelt, that's all.
Just Starfelt, and then he's injured as well. Just Narosky's out, because Narosky was Starfelt's replacement. So that's hard.
Lewis Palma is apparently getting number 7, so he's going to be.
So he theoretically will be the Jota replacement, the left winger. So, but he's not in the door. And as to Paul's point, we've been sitting here with our hands under our backsides for the last 3 weeks, 4 weeks. Presumably try to get these deals done. So there's a lot of talk, a lot of social media talk that we're going to sign 5 players this week and all that sort of stuff. If we haven't signed 5 players in the whole window, are we really going to sign 5 in like the last week of a transfer window? I mean, it seems unlikely. It seems like Joe Hart's going to be our keeper for this season, barring injury or doesn't even we're not linked to any goalkeepers as far as I've seen any in the last few weeks. So what are we hoping to get in this window? Well, I think we definitely still need a left back, because Bernabei was absolutely horrendous when he came off the bench on Saturday. He just gave the ball away over and over and over again. And then obviously, I don't know, maybe the other lads had touched on the social media post by Hakstabanovic, feeling underappreciated, but Bernabei was one of the players that liked that post. So not doing himself any favours from the supporters, or probably from the management when they see it. And his performance obviously didn't stack up. So you've got Greg Taylor underperforming, or hasn't had a good game since Brendan Rodgers has come in the door. Your backup left back's not putting any pressure on him whatsoever. So I mean, for me, that has to be a no-brainer position to try and bring someone in with a bit of quality there. I think we need another central midfielder. If Awata's not in the frame and we've only got McGregor, Holm, Turnbull, and O'Reilly, until presumably we're not going to lose Hatate in this window, but he's out injured at the moment anyway. I still feel like that leaves us pretty light on. I kind of feel like we need another box to box sort of, somebody can get stuck in and get involved and take a bit of the pressure off Calmac. Well, I mean, we can only go off what we saw last season. We thought he was pretty tidy on the ball and kept possession and was decent in a tackle. And I kind of thought that's the sort of player that Brendan Rodgers would play. But for whatever reason, he's not getting a look in. So you have to trust the manager, what you see on the training park. But from the evidence that we saw last season, you think he'd be the guy. But I don't know. But I think if he's not going to play him, I think we need another midfielder. And then are we talking about a lone centre forward? Because I've said this last week, I'll say it again. If something happens to Kyogo, you're relying on Maeda. And there's a case to be made for playing Palmer and Abada and having Maeda as your backup centre forward off the bench, possibly. But I still think if O's going to be out for a couple of months, it leaves us pretty vulnerable in that key position as well.
I think he's
was he not on the bench on? Was he not on the bench on?
No, he wasn't on the bench, but I think they said he's a week away or 2 weeks away from training, maybe.
All right, well, maybe we can get away with that one, but
I agree. No, but I agree with you, Andy. I think we should be having someone in there. Look, we know Kyogo needs shoulder surgery, so it's just a case of how long. Like that could easily elevate from he needs it, we can fit it in the winter break to, or next season, or it could happen now it needs to happen now. So yeah, I don't know who came up with the 5, whether that's fan related or I know apparently Rodgers has been chatting to the press kind of behind closed doors, but so we hear. And if that's the case, then 5 to me fits, right? We Palmer coming, left back 2, goalie to put pressure or to be replaced with 3, centre back probably on loan.
Rob Holding maybe from Arsenal,
possibly. Like either way, you can't go. Like you can't go to. I don't think you can even go to Ibrox with Scales. I certainly don't think you can go into the Champions League with Scales. So given the other guys are going to miss at least probably 3 match days, they're due to be back the week before. 2 months takes you to the week before match day 3. Now, if we think that they're going to be thrown into match day 3 on the back of a 2-month stint out, I don't believe that. So you can basically call match day 3 gone as well. So match day 4 is probably the earliest you see any of those, unless that's assuming they don't have any setbacks and they're on track. And you know what it's like with hamstrings, notoriously easy to go again. So you don't really want to jeopardize that by rushing people back, especially when the Champions League campaign will be half finished. So really, to me, you're looking for a Champions League ready, experienced loan centre back. So somebody like Rob Holding does fit the bill, or you go and cough up the money for somebody like Scott McKenna, who we've talked about previously, that's an international defender. And he hasn't played to that level in Europe, but he's played in the Premier League for a season. He would have to look to step up to Champions League. They're just 2 names. There'll be tons. That's not my job to scout for that. People say, who do we fix it? It's not our job, right? These are, they must have done plenty of centre back scouting because they've been dropping like flies. But I think it's definitely, it's a loan, and it's maybe not even a loan to buy. And I'm not a big fan of that usually, but needs must. And we're right in the hole in the centre back position, and that needs fixed before Sunday. It needs fixed before Sunday, and it definitely is fixed for the Champions League.
Not with a view to Ibrox or Champions League, but on the weekend, I'd have rather seen Dane Murray playing than Liam Scales. I'd have rather.
Well, I was gonna ask about Dane Murray. I was gonna ask. Well, yeah, I was going to ask about Dane Murray because I know he struggled with injury, but prior to that, he was right on the cusp of a first team start. I assumed that he was starting to come back because we hadn't heard of him being injured, and we've allowed Lull to go out on loan, and I think a few others have gone out on loan. So that means there must be others. You still need a B team, right? You still need players to play. So given everything we heard about, Dane Murray in previously, and he was starting to break through, and his injury was very unfortunately timed. if he's in any way match fit, he should be floating around the fringes of this for sure. Maybe not at Ibrox as a starting point, but it's, if he was fit, then maybe he should have been getting the shout for
a home game
for
against the
Johnstone.
worst team in the league. Why is
Exactly.
if you're not going to play him? Do you know what I mean, like when are you going to play him?
Yeah.
If not then?
And look, Vata's obviously out. It looks like he's out of the picture, right? He's changed his agent. There's a deal in front of him which he hasn't signed. He's not been getting in match day squads, and then he likes Haksabanović's post. To me, the writing's on the wall with Vata, which is disappointing because, and ultimately, I'm not surprised. We've not really shown young players that there's a pathway to the first team. But I agree with you, Sean. Take those political stuff and other issues out of the way. I'd have rather seen him coming off the bench to play on the wing than James Forrest. Like, Forrest has been a great servant, but I didn't expect him to produce anything. Also being asked to play that position again on the left wing.
We're not talking about Ibrox here. We're talking about a home game against St Johnstone.
I know.
Who lost 4-0 to Stirling Albion, right? It's not.
It's the first, I think it's the first non-loss of the season, is it not? Like, I think
probably is. I think they lost all 4 games in the League Cup, and then
and they lost the 2 games before this. It's the first point of the season. The longer it went, the worse it got. To the fact, literally two really good solid saves from Hart get us a point, keep us top of the league.
I mean, one of them you'd expect any keeper to make, but yeah, the other one was a really good save.
Well, especially because he'd done nothing up until then. He literally hadn't even touched the ball. Like he just obviously had to snap into action, and that, in fairness to Joe Hart, he did his job. I mean, he did what he had to do, but far out. I mean, we should not have been in that situation. Like that just should have been cleared. Like,
and then
well
the break.
Before that.
Yeah, we've talked about the Scales one. It should be dealt with. Like, he lets it, like you say, lets it bounce twice, and then he does this sort of weak downward header that the guy can keep it in play. That's a shamble, but that is a really good reflex save, to the point where Jesus, like, as he must have got something on that, because really good. But then the other one, which is a reasonably routine narrow in the angle of a save, but at the death, you want to make that, or the game is done. Am I right in saying that comes from a Burnaby slack cross field, cross box pass that goes straight to the defender, and then they break? And my only I'm pivoting slightly because I'm thinking of Lagerbilkia, so I'm going to just go into chatting about his performance. I thought overall he looked, reasonably solid. His distribution wasn't too bad. He was trying to, look at forward passes. He was more adept at that than Scales. Again, it's a low bar. And for what he's had to deal with in his first 2 games, I think he's looked okay. My one concern was Stevie May sort of ran away from him. It's like, I'm slightly concerned when Stevie May is gassing him for pace. Like, the guy's 6'3".
He was probably a yard out of position, so he was trying to make up a bit. I'll give him a wee bit of like a slight out there, but I mean, yes, right, he should be in a better position to begin with. But yeah, the angles kind of look like Stevie May did sort of leave him for dead, and but I just think that Lagerbilkia is okay. His distribution on the actual grass was better this week compared to the plastic pitch last week. But again, he's still being asked to play those longer balls, and should your centre halves be playing those passes? Like, I have an issue with that. Like,
it's a bit Hollywood. It's a bit Hollywood, and it's like he's not Beckenbauer, right? Like,
do we have the centre halves to play those type of passes? I don't think we ever have. Like, CCV can do it on occasion, but like,
I always remember Bobo Baldi's debut. It was like Motherwell or something, and 2-0 up, I think, and he launches this long ball up the pitch to Lubo Moravcik, who, because he's Lubo, manages to pull it out there and then beat the goalkeeper. And everyone's like, oh, we've got a ball playing centre half. And then what happened after that? Right? Like, it was all like, oh my God, this amazing.
Bobo's trying to get you.
I think the other challenge we've got. The challenge we've got with playing longer balls out at the back is we saw at Aberdeen, we got some joy with that, albeit we overused that tactic, but that's because they were willing to come out and have a go, and there was space in behind for guys to run in behind. It's a tough enough ask to ask a defender, a centre back, to spray a 40, 50, 60 yard pass on the diagonal and pick out his man on the wing. It's nearly impossible when the defence is sitting on the 18 yard line. There's no space to work behind. like, what's he supposed to do? Trap it on his chest, drop it to his feet, and beat his man within, a few seconds? It's just nonsense. Like, I don't see, like,
that's why teams give up that space. That's why they don't.
Well,
that's why they tuck in, right? Because they know.
But it doesn't. It
It
doesn't.
has you travel time for the ball.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense to me in terms of how Rodgers typically would want to play the ball. Like, he wants a considered build-up. He wants to retain possession, and if we're going to pump it long for 40 yards to a player that's well marshaled, you at best a 50-50. Like, surely you should be. To me, that again, it goes back to this thing of the tactics are muddled. With the players we've got, the successes from high intensity press, win the ball back high up the pitch, and then move it quickly between players and get between the lines and get round the back and pull it back. Especially against a low block. You're not going to beat a low block other than either getting behind and turning it back, or somebody hitting a worldie from 25 yards that doesn't get out to close them down. Like,
I'm calling this. Sorry, Paul. I didn't mean to interrupt you. I was just saying, I'm calling this. I don't think that if we get anything from Ibrox this week, it's not going to be Rodgers' tactics. Right? It's going to be if the players come in for a dogfight and they win that dogfight, like that sort of stuff that we need to see happening for us to win games. Is we have to have that players committing to a run. Trusting that their 1-2 is going to come off, trusting that their pass is going to be perfect and that the person they're playing it to is going to be able to play it first time for them to really commit to that full pace run in behind. That's not going to happen at Ibrox, because if you commit to that, if you overcommit like that, you're a man down when you lose possession, right? So they're not going to do that. They're not going to overcommit at Ibrox. So the only way we're going to win this is if it's just like a set piece or just some individual brilliance or just some dogged determination to win the ball in a area that's beneficial. There's no way that Rodgers' tactics that he's trying to implement are going to be enforced this week in any way that's going to help us.
I think well, sorry, just quick point. I think that we're talking about Rodgers' system and players not adapting or understanding it or whatever. I think Maeda's the case in point for not understanding it and being in a situation where those low block long ball into a low block is just totally anti his game. He hasn't got the space to run into. He hasn't got the trickery or the close control to be able to do much in that situation. So he's very much nullified. And then O'Reilly's probably embracing the system because he's timing his runs into the box reasonably well. Because, I mean, he got in the end of 4 chances there. There was the 3 good ones and then the 4th one as well, which was a harder chance. But he seems to be getting in the right positions on the right ball. Just unfortunately didn't put his laces through any of them. So, he didn't finish them. But he's at least shown signs that he understands what's been asked of him. So there is the signs there. But then flip it to Ibrox this weekend. Maeda's very much back in the picture because he does a good job against.
Shuts down
Tavernier.
He was
in the media saying he doesn't know the tactics. He said it like himself after this weekend.
And on top of that, they're going to have more space at Ibrox than they did against St Johnstone. The Rangers aren't going to sit in like that. They might play a bit of counter-attacking football, but they're not going to play like that. So there might be more joy from, and Ibrox is a bigger pitch as well, or as big a pitch. So you don't know, but yeah, when it comes to Glasgow derbies, like form kind of almost goes out the window. I mean, all right, we've had dominance over them for a number of years, but like if it's like this when both teams are very patchy, which I think they are, and we obviously are at the moment, all bets are off. Like anything's possible. And like you say, Sean, it might not be tactics. It just might be, like you say, a good old-fashioned dogfight and a bit of a scramash. But I'm definitely not writing it off. I definitely think we could walk away, and we'll just be like, well, that's maybe just been the catalyst to kickstart our season. Yeah, maybe not. But I'm not by all means sort of writing off going, oh, we are in dire straits here and it's all going to be terrible. Like, they're not flying by any stretch. So anything's possible.
I was going to say, not quite the same point, but it's sort of similar. Feel is that there's a couple of things that gives me a bit of hope for Sunday. One is hopefully there's at least 2 or 3 starters coming through the door. or at least to boost up the squad. So we don't really know. We can't really judge until Friday who's going to be close to the starting lineup, and hopefully he'll have more choice than he's had. That's point one. Point two, to Anthony's point, they're never going to have a better chance this season to go after us, and I think Beale will. I'll put them out to have a crack, and I think it might actually, in some ways, play into our hands. There will be space in behind. The game will be more open. It'll be a bit more like Pittodrie than either the last two games that we've played. And there'll be chances. Both teams are a bit shaky. It could be quite a high scoring game. And we just need to be a bit more sharp. But I think, to your point, Sean, I don't think we will overcommit, but I do think he'll still try and play through. I agree with Anthony. I think despite how poor he's been and that he doesn't really seem to fit the system, I'd play Miera. Just pure, two things: work rate, and that, how did you get his goal at Ibrox the last time? Pressure, broke down, ran through, tucked it away, and he does stifle Tavernier. And let's be honest, they filled their team full of giants. Their main tactic will be to get him loose on the right and pump balls into our box and try and cause us problems on an untested back line. So if you can shut off the supply there, and he's been proven to be able to be pretty good at that, you maybe pass up one attacking option, particularly in the state we're in, right? It's going to need a bit of backs the ball. We are going to have to ride our luck. And if we for like the last God knows how many years, we usually go to Ibrox, gung ho, feeling confident, and try and outplay them and try and win the game. I don't think we'll be doing that this weekend. I think we'll be going there to try and get something out of the game, and hopefully that's a win. But we will be trying to shut down their key parts of the team, which he's a poor defender, but he is probably one of their biggest threats moving forward in terms of the quality of delivery that he puts in the box. So I think he will be trying to shut down Tavernier.
So here's a question for you two guys that has a couple of facets to it. So let me just flesh it out. So we've been on top of the table for 19 months. Like by the time we go to Ibrox, we've been finished every game week top of the table for the last 19 months, if you include summer break. So we're currently, again, despite that draw with St Johnstone, still top of the table. Do we see us coming out of away from Ibrox still top of the table? Now, obviously, if we get a draw, then that keeps us ahead of Sevco. But St Mirren away to Livingston and Motherwell away to Hearts. Is a draw enough to keep us top of the table? What do you see? What do you see happening there, Anthony?
I mean, it's a fair point. I don't really know, Sean. At this point in time, would I take a point from Ibrox? Yes, I would. It's more for them to try and win and build the momentum for their season. But if we come away with a point, I think that would be a good point. Especially no fans. We're backs against the wall a little bit at the moment with all our injuries and all our other issues. So yeah, I would take a point, and if that means we drop to second in the table, but the Huttons are still third or fourth, I'm okay with that. But obviously we come away with a win, even better. But yeah, at this point in time, I would take a point. And just I guess the other thing I was just thinking about there, while you two were talking, was just that who do you play in the centre mid with Cal Mack? Because if it's David Turnbull, I just worry. I worry about our physicality and just our ability to manage that game. So I don't know.
There's no way it's Turnbull. No chance.
What does he go back to home, or does he throw a Watt in from the cold? I mean, the only other one I just thought of there was it's Kwon, but he obviously had an absolute stinker against Bilbao. So.
Well, yeah, he struggled under the pressure. He struggled under the pressure of Celtic Park. He's never going to deal with the hostility of Ibrox. You just can't do that. For me, I'd love to see Iwata come in from the cold. The thing about Iwata is so if Iwata played, I'd want him to play. I think we should set up to be strong in the hold and midfield and in front of the back, especially if it's another centre back pairing. That if it scales, that's a worry. If it's a new centre back, then it's another new pairing. Play a double pivot. Play O'Reilly in front of them. And put your most energetic wingers on as well, and then you've got a bit of energy in the front four, and then you've got protection for the back. But does it look like it's going to happen because Iwata is so far out of the picture? So I am a bit concerned about that, because it really just comes back to one of, as far as I can see, one of two, either Home or Turnbull. And Turnbull was dreadful the other day, and Holmes barely had minutes. So
I agree with you guys that Iwata on the books, Iwata is probably the best option to go in there as the third midfielder. But my prediction right now is there's going to be 3 debutants on
I think there'll be a new
Sunday.
midfielder. I think there'll be
I
a
think
new midfielder.
new centre back, new centre mid, and I
Yeah.
think Lewis Palma will start in the wing. That's my.
I guess the thing about Palma is if he starts in the wing, is presumably I think he's a left and out. Is he an out and out left winger, or does he play both? Because he plays both wings.
Right-footed left winger.
He's a right-footed left winger, right? So that means if he plays to the point we were both making, we thought Maeda would play from the defensive side. Do you throw? I don't know. Like you don't buy a new left winger and then don't use them. But equally, do you start Maeda and try and defend your position and hope you nick something in the first sort of 45 minutes, 60, and then let him loose with half an hour to go?
I can't see us making 3 debutants at Ibrox. I just think that's too many. It's too big it's just too big like not a risk, but it's just too big a call. It's like you want players in there that have played the fixture before where possible. Obviously, there's going to be exceptions. So I think you're right. If we manage to bring in a centre half on loan, I definitely expect them to start. They've got to. I don't think at left wing we have to. I think you would start with Maeda and start with Abada, and then you can bring Palma into the game.
No Yang, not Yang.
No, I don't think so either. No,
I think experience the fixture, he's got to go with him.
He's got to go with the guys.
He's got Barisic, hasn't he? So you've just puts that doubt in the defender's mind. So I think he's got to play.
And like I say, the midfield is definitely up. The midfield is definitely up for debate. And like I said, if it's Turnbull, Home, or a new recruit, then all right, I'll take the new recruit. But there's a lot of ifs, buts there because nothing's been actually mentioned or linked or anything. So hopefully something just drops out the woodwork the next couple of days.
The Man City midfielder is the one that's probably seems the most likely.
Doyle, is that right? Doyle.
Yeah, I think is that his name. Yeah, I think so. And by all accounts, he's a very good young player. I think he was at Sheffield United in the Championship last year, and sort of got some rave reviews. And I guess to me, I don't know the situation with him is whether City are willing to let him go, and that's just a loan and they go back, or whether that's a loan with an option to buy. I prefer it was the latter. But again, we're in a position now where we need quality in the door. So when it's this late in the day and we've clearly missed out on a few. We must have missed out on a few. Otherwise, how are we this late in the window?
I think we can't speculate too much because by the time this goes out, yeah. Sorry, Anthony, on you go down.
Yeah, well, that's true. But then I think the other thing is we're competing against Saudi Arabia. I mean, that's the issue we've got here. There's players that are like just going for funny money, and we can't compete with that.
But that's a flash in the pan in a sense, because you saw what happened with Jota, right? They're now all maxed out their foreign quotas, right? So they are now all one in, one out in terms of what's happening after this big surge. So I don't think that's going to be a big issue in the future.
Well, it's not a big issue in the future, but it's an issue. It's been an issue, like I said, up until now, because you can't compete with
summer.
That. And I think that's been this summer. Yeah.
Well, you're saying that we Lewis Palma had an offer to go to the Middle East for double the money he's getting here, so we still have Champions League prestige on our side. Just as time's ticking on, and I'm sure the Thursday guys will do a really in-depth preview of the Ibrox, so we'll probably and there'll be a lot of moving parts between now and Thursday, so I think they'll be able to give some fresh insights as well. So we'll start to kind of do our final few segments. Did you any cinch moments of the week for you guys? For me, it was the Aberdeen player kicking the penalty off of his own foot, scoring the goal, and then VAR and the referee both missing it somehow. Anything for you guys that summed up Scottish football this week?
Well, I predicted Lee Johnstone getting sacked as the first SPFL manager getting the boot.
As did I.
I'm up. One of my predictions is up. Oh, we all called it.
All three of us called that one, yeah.
And in fairness, there was no collusion. We all came to our own decisions there. So we're all one up in the predictions so far. So I think you said, Paul, I don't think we were expecting it to be so soon, but it happened.
It was happened to Stevie Hamill last week. It's the European football thing, right? Isn't it? These
He's an
teams are
absolute
not
bell.
set to have the two fronts tackle on the two fronts, and they just get canned.
He's an absolute bell end. He's an absolute bell end. So he's not. He's just. I have no sympathy, and I think they probably just went. You know what? Like if you were a nice guy, we'd maybe give you a bit more time, but you're a douche, so you're out the door. So yeah. So on to the next one. Take your platform trainers and off you pop. So that is definitely my Cinch moment of the week.
And if you haven't caught it yet, the Monday guys did a good segment on potential replacements for Lee Johnson, and looking at that, the Central Coast Mariners manager maybe coming over. So give those guys a listen if you haven't already. Paul, any Scottish football moments for you?
Maybe a team's ultras booing the manager when we're still top of the league. Is that a cinch? Is that a cinch moment of the week? If you take the green tinted specs off, like no, they pay their money, they're entitled to. But I think there is a bit, you know, some of them have got an agenda anyway. And there was a bit. I think let's judge us a wee bit further down the track. We're all frustrated, but maybe judge it a wee bit down the track.
Okay. To circle back then to the Celtic game, any final thoughts you've not caught yet on the Celtics and Johnstone game, Paul?
Nah, I think we've pretty much covered it. Yang, we didn't touch on Yang too much, but yeah, I thought he had a good game, and yeah, he created. I think he did create one of those chances. Did he create that chance in the second half for O'Reilly? I think that was his. Was that his ball in?
Don't remember.
I think it might have been, but enough there. I think that he's nowhere near the finished article, right? But yeah, there's enough to see why he was the sort of, I think, young player of the year or breakout player of the year in the K1 last year. So hopefully things start to pick up generally for the team, and that positivity can sort of continue for him. But yeah, it was a marked difference when he came off.
Anthony?
Two wee quick ones. Obviously, we referred to Said Haksabanović's Instagram post where he's feeling underappreciated and he's not getting game time. So that's usually the current modern players' cry for "I want to leave the club." So I definitely wouldn't be surprised if he's out the door by the end of the window. He's one of these guys that he goes on, he looks busy, but apart from that one where he dinks the ball across to O'Reilly for that chance, that was really his one sort of bit of end product that actually maybe contributed potentially towards a goal. So he's probably been one of those signings that sort of you're thinking that he's going to come good, but I think 40 odd appearances, 3 goals and some 5 assists or something like that. So pretty slim pickings, and not able to break out of the first team like the starting lineup under Ange or under Brendan so far. So I think that will be it might be curtains for him by the time we come back on air next week. And just the other point I want to say is, Mahesh, you keep commenting that you miss our live show. We're not going out live anymore, buddy. We're just recording and gets released on a Tuesday, so you're not missing us live. But I do appreciate your comments in the YouTube video section. So we do see them, and we do appreciate your contributions.
My last comment was I've seen a few things about the rookie referee Matthew McDermott. So as far as I'm aware, he's not done any Celtic games before. This was his first, and there was some people giving him stick saying, "Oh, he was showing his inexperience, letting St Johnstone away with all their time wasting and gamesmanship." And I actually had the opposite view, to be totally honest. If you think that was he was having a lot less of it than any other referee has on a weekly basis at Celtic. So if you think he's going to get any better than that, then you're thinking of referees from another country. That was a standard Scottish referee performance and not any worse than anyone else. If anything, it was better, to be totally honest, which is probably a reflection on the overall crapness of Scottish officiating, that this guy came in for his first ever game and probably did better, to be totally honest.
He booked one of their players for taking forever to take a throw in.
Which doesn't normally happen. When does that ever happen?
Which doesn't normally happen. So, I think the goalkeeper was taking the mickey a wee bit, and I was counting 6 seconds out a few times. But I mean, that's perfect.
It's every week. So nothing happens every week.
We need to take our chances much earlier. We need to take our chances much earlier in the game. So,
yeah. Anyway, man of the match to finish off, Paul.
Joe Hart.
Oh, okay. Anthony.
Well, we don't get a point out of it without
It's true.
without
He
Joe
kept,
Hart,
he kept
so-
his top of the table. You're absolutely right, Anthony.
AJ.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, I hadn't actually decided myself yet. I think in terms of general play, probably Matt O'Reilly, but with those chances that he missed, he's cost us 2 points in a sense. So, yeah, man. No one.
Toss
Some
a
people
coin.
were some people were saying Yang, but I'll probably go with AJ as well. I think he did make a difference coming back in, filled the void. But yeah, I get your. It's a good shout, Paul. Joe Hart was very good as well.
That's fair.
Okay, I'll go with AJ though. Tiebreaker. And that's us. We'll wrap up there. Paul, any final thoughts this week?
Yeah, one little music recommendation. As I try and keep a music recommendation in, this is less an album, and actually it's a YouTube thing. So, for people of my vintage that are Oasis and Noel Gallagher fans, Gibson have got an Icons series. Gibson Guitars have got an Icon series. And the latest episode is an hour of Noel Gallagher basically chatting through his career from his days as a roadie all the way through to sort of finishing up where he is with the High Flying Birds as it is. And it's I'm a big fan, and even I took out 2 or 3 new stories which I'd never heard before. So it's worth a look. He's always a good listen in terms of an interviewee. So yeah, worth a look.
Anthony?
I started watching Ahsoka, which is the latest Star Wars series. Actually, pretty good. First 2 episodes were pretty good. So that
Isn't
looks
that
like
the
it's.
Jawa word for egg? Soka?
I don't know about that, Sean, but she's a character who's been in cartoons for years and now
Oh,
has been fleshed
Ahsoka
out into real
Tan.
life.
Ah.
Ahsoka Tano. Yes.
I thought you were
It'd be
saying
good.
Soka.
Oh, Ahsoka.
Yeah, Ahsoka. Yeah, sorry.
And the late Ray Stevenson seems to play a very good part as an evil Jedi. So, so that's definitely worth a watch if you're into that sort of thing. I think it will be 2 each on the weekend. I am going to be flying back from Brisbane as the game is playing. So I'm praying that the Wi-Fi on the plane is working. Otherwise, I'm going to have to go dark and wait for it to come up so I can watch it later. But fingers crossed, Qantas, I need on the phone to Alan Joyce and tell me sort the Wi-Fi out for the flight home.
All right, Paul.
You at the
give
club?
us a
Are you
prediction
at
for Ibrox.
2-1 Celtic.
Oh, yeah. Right. So just to finish up, then, Matt, I think it was actually your recommendation before, Paul. Succession. Did you chime in on that one?
Succession, yeah.
I've just started 1 episode in, and it is brilliant after only 1 episode. So I'm sad it took me this long to get to it, but I'm going to just gun through it.
Well,
now, to be honest.
you've got I think 4 seasons you've got to
4
get through,
seasons, that's
so
right, yeah.
it gets amazing. So yeah, enjoy that.
I'm looking forward to it. And my prediction for the weekend is 1-1. The most unimaginative prediction possible. Okay, that's us for tonight, or this morning, or this afternoon, depending on where and when you're listening. Thanks again, everyone, for tuning in. Like and subscribe, please, including this episode individually, as it really helps us. Other than that, we'll see you all next week, hopefully still top of the table, and hopefully with a win at Ibrox. Hail, hail.
Hail, hail.
Hail.